Good morning, afternoon, evening. I'm Jesse Hughes.
I'm Daniel A. Gilmore.
This is Show and Tell, episode 5. The flavor of the week is Dark City, 1998, directed by, is it Alex Proyas? Mm-hmm. Did he direct The Crow?
Yes, he also directed The Crow.
Okay, that was the only... I recognized his name and I thought it was The Crow.
Well,
I haven't seen...
He also directed Knowing.
Don't know. Oh, Knowing. That was the Nicolas Cage movie?
I think so. It was like a movie that I had no interest in seeing. I can tell you that much.
That can't be good. I haven't seen The Crow. It's one of those movies I've always wanted to see. So
maybe I'll put that on the list.
That could be on the list.
Crow is it's a childhood favorite.
Yeah. This was Dan's recommendation. So did you see this movie like when it came out?
I didn't see it in theaters.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I live my life. I remember seeing this in theaters.
Right. Me
but
too.
I saw it immediately, I think after, like on VHS.
Yeah.
At the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I just remember this year, 98 and 99 specifically, was huge.
Had some of your favorite movies.
Just for like this kind of movie, I guess I want to say.
Like sci-fi.
Because Dark City came out in 98, then 99 had 13th Floor, and then Matrix was that same year, 99.
Oh yeah, so yeah, I didn't really connect that. This has a lot in common with Matrix. I didn't really connect that they came out around the same time.
And I don't know if you want to talk about that now, but there's like some Matrix tie-ins.
A lot of Matrix tie-ins. Yeah, I actually have a couple things I'll say related to the Matrix. As I like to do, I'll throw a blanket statement over the whole thing. Watching this movie was very similar to watching Gentlemen Broncos for me overall. It has its upsides, but ultimately it didn't hold together for me because of characters that I didn't care about and a lack of a sense of purpose. But again, we'll get into all that as we go through our discussion. First impression of the movie, and this is an impression that stuck throughout the movie. Setting is amazing. The effects are amazing. The shots, like cinematography, the lighting, like the way lighting is used to kind of guide your eye to what's important and to kind of accentuate the shadows of the film. I absolutely loved the visuals of this film.
So I did a quick question, I guess, before we get into this.
Okay.
Did you watch the 98 theatrical release?
I did not. So
you watched the 2008 director's cut,
right?
Which is we're talking about the same movie then,
right?
Because I watched the director's cut as well,
and so I found out after watching it that there was a voiceover of Keith Sutherland in the beginning of the theatrical cut that ruined some of the movie, and I'm glad I didn't watch that version, and I didn't even look up to see what it said. But yeah, I was reading the notes on the film, and it was the director objected to having Kiefer Sutherland ruin some of the movie at the beginning in the studio, of course. But it said, people aren't going to understand this. Let's put this voiceover at the beginning. So I'm curious to see what the voiceover is.
It's pretty much just what he says towards the end of the movie.
Okay,
when he's just like, "Oh, this is
you
what's
have to
going
train
on
your
in the
mind
movie."
to
No. Like when they're on the boat together.
Okay,
and he's telling them what the strangers are.
Okay, yeah. Dang, well, why would they put that at the beginning of the movie?
Because they think people are dumb. I don't want to say people are dumb.
Well, yeah.
But they say it generally like how moviegoers.
Right. So then the first scene with, one of the main characters, I don't know the actor's name.
It's Rufus Sewell.
Okay, yeah, that was the guy you mentioned at the end of the last episode.
I forgot to look up everything he's been in. He had been in a ton of stuff recently, but I think he was actually in Black Flag.
Black Flag,
like Assassin's Creed game.
The game? Yeah. Oh, okay. That's cool.
But that was my first thing was just like Kiefer Sutherland is like the makeup on him is good.
Yeah, good makeup, and then once you're introduced to his character, it's a very different Kiefer Sutherland character.
You haven't seen Freeway.
I have not seen Freeway. No. I'm used to Kiefer Sutherland, Jack Bauer, whatever else he's been in. He's Jack Bauer and everything I've seen him in. So that's what I'm used to. And then there's Phone Booth, but he's still kind of, it's all about his voice. This was a different kind of role for him. It's a little...
Well, he's actually like a super solid actor.
Oh, he is. He's a really good actor.
Recently, I guess, get typecast.
Yeah.
That's the only roles he's taken.
That's what I assumed, yeah, because I've never really seen anything old where he had a major role like in this movie. But the movie opens up Rufus Sewell, and I was like, Saw? It's like the beginning of Saw when he's in the bathtub.
Yeah, he's in the bathtub.
The movie has nothing to do with that, but it's just kind of reminded me of that.
And he wakes up in the tub, and my first thought, and I see him. I wish he was in more stuff, and then also his ass.
He was, great ass. He was in. I'm used to seeing him as villains. He was the villain in A Knight's Tale.
Yes.
And there was what was the other movie I saw fairly recently where he was the villain? He's always a bad guy, basically.
Yeah, he does play the villain in a lot of movies.
That's what I'm used to. So
but he's
a
super good actor, so I don't even care.
Yeah, good actor. I thought, he must be the serial killer in this movie because he's always plays a bad guy. But I mean, pretty early on, it's pretty apparent that he's not what he is painted to be at the beginning of the film. I loved the small touch. This obviously comes back and later in the plot, so it had a purpose. But I liked the small touch of him picking up the goldfish
fish,
and putting it back in the bathtub. So it leads you to go, okay, this is a decent person.
My note there was just, that water is purple. Don't put the fish in the water.
He survived long enough, maybe an hour, until the detectives got to the crime scene.
Well, yeah, that's one thing about the movie is, like, you don't know what the progression of time is.
Right.
From what you understand of the movie, it's that time passes every hour. They do the tuning.
They do the tuning every hour.
And then they set the clock back.
Right.
So it literally could have been any amount of time.
That's true. That's a cool point. A lot of my notes skip around. Like, I know I skipped some scenes. What's your next scene? I've got Jennifer Connelly. So, again, another great actress. Love the rendition of the tune she's singing. I didn't write down the tune, but she sings twice in the movie.
Yeah, and they're two famous songs.
And they're, two famous songs. And I just love the mix of them. Like, I'd like to check out the soundtrack just for those songs. I liked the ambient tunes as well throughout the movie, but her mixes were really cool on the songs that she sang.
They should be within the context of it, as I just was making my notes. They're literally, it's the phone call from The Matrix. So it's even how the shot works is because the phone rings, it cuts to the phone.
Oh, yeah.
Then he answers it, and he's just like, "You're in grave danger. There's people after you."
So which movie was being made first?
Okay, so I'll get into this then.
Okay.
This was shot at Fox Studios Australia.
Okay.
Matrix was also filmed at Fox Studios Australia, and it used some of the same sets.
That was another thing.
This was film first, though. This
was film first. Okay,
yeah.
That's what I was curious about. Like, which idea was generated first? Because this and The Matrix have a lot in common. I think The Matrix did it better, but maybe it's because it learned from this movie.
They're similar in style and things, but there's tons of stuff different. Then he opens the phone booth. Lady falls out, and it's like, hey, just totally let that lady watches it happen. And I thought that was pretty funny.
He's good enough to put a goldfish back in the bathtub, but he won't help a lady. He's like, you're sleeping, you're good.
Yeah, she's like held up against the door. He opens it. What do you think is going to happen?
So when you see The Strangers, is that before or after he gets his wallet out of the giant lost and found wall?
It's before.
That's before. Okay, so you've already met The Strangers. You've met John Hurt, which is the next name on my list. It's just a list of names, and I recognize someone. I'm like, yeah, sweet, I know who this is.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
Skinniest I've seen John Hurt. Totally random fact there. Love him, though. He's got a fantastic voice. The line Kiefer Sutherland delivers in earnest, wherever your husband is, he is searching for himself. That was a cool line. But so he gets his wallet out of this. He goes up to this lost and found wall.
It's like the diner.
Okay.
And you're paying for everything and just like pulling it out. But it's just like a ridiculous setup in itself.
I see. Okay, so he paid with his wallet and they were giving his wallet back. But does he have to put a coin in, or because there's a coin slot?
So you're buying with coins or whatever. Okay. It's supposed to be 40s, 50s.
Right.
Kind of thing.
So that scene is the first what the heck moment is when he glares at the wallet and then it explodes. So my problem there, and with this and every other scene up until he finds out what he can do, is he doesn't really react at all to the fact that he's able to, what we find out is called tuning. He's able to tune, so he's able to just basically shape this world the way he sees fit. He wants his wallet back. The case explodes. He gets his wallet back.
Yeah, but
he doesn't really react at all.
In that scene, I think it's just like it opens, and I don't know if he realizes he did it. Because it seems like to me he doesn't realize he's doing it until he knocks Kiefer Sutherland over towards the end.
But there was like a slight explosion when he gets his wallet.
But I'm just saying, like, I don't know if he's just like rationalizing that in his head, just like, oh, that was like a weird thing that happened. Yeah, because I'm imagining you don't see like wavelengths shooting out of your head.
Well, of course, yeah. But I mean, there's other times like leading up to where he does it, and he's just like, all right, no reaction at all. That's. Well,
I think the only other time he really does it is when he fights the strangers in the first scene where he meets them.
Well, he makes doors several times. He makes things move around. He doesn't do it. He doesn't do it intentionally.
But that's what I'm saying, that he would notice.
Right, but he notices the door shape from out of nowhere. And my problem is he doesn't behave like a real person, would, in terms of why the heck is this happening? He just kind of goes along with it. Just a little thing. It was kind of the first thing that kind of irked me at first. And then right after that, starts to walk out and the cops try to stop him. And then the random girl from the alley just decides to save him.
Yeah, and I'm going, maybe the hooker with a heart of gold and a kid.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, maybe there's an explanation here. There never really was. There's a lot of plot holes for me that did eventually have explanations, but that was one where it was just like she just randomly decides to save him. Okay, I mean, you could explain it all away by the fact that the aliens have control over the world and they get to decide who does what, and they're all based on what the aliens put into them. But still for that is just too many little things that weren't believable incidents, even in the universe that's created in this movie.
No, I don't disagree with you there. But I mean, at the same time, you have to like explain stuff away just as, well, it's a movie.
Right. But this movie does a lot of that.
Yeah.
A lot more than that than I'm okay with. Personally, that's me. I mean,
yeah. So I may just know it's like realizing your psychic powers. And it's like, how would you know that? Because I was like, well, if you had superpower, what if we all had superpowers? Right. You just don't know how to use them. You wouldn't know.
I know, but I would freak out if things are happening around me and I whether or not I think it's me doing it, I would have a reaction.
See, really I wouldn't though. Like if I saw somebody do something, I'd be like, oh well, they're lucky. I wish I could do that.
It's gonna. I got something to show you later.
All right,
and not in front of these two people listening. So here's my next note: old bald dudes. Do I care? I didn't care about the villain. We knew who the villain was. We didn't necessarily know at this point that they were framing him for what he did. We think maybe they're chasing him for what he did, or we don't really get a sense of why they're chasing after John, other than we soon find out it's because he can tune, and they feel threatened by that.
Well, they didn't know he could tune until after their fight,
right?
And the guy goes back and tells everybody,
right?
They were already after him because they're trying to frame him,
which is what we find out. Mm-hmm. Right. Because they want to learn
humans, yeah.
Exactly, because they want to learn what makes them human. That's one thing that there's never, that's the explanation for why they're doing what they're doing, is that they are studying us and they want to know what the soul is, what makes us human.
No, they don't even know what the soul is at that point.
Okay.
That's like the end of the movie.
Right, but that ends up being the movie's explanation for what they're looking for. And so that explained why they were doing what they were doing, but they never explain why they want to know what humanity is.
Okay, so the breakdown is the strangers are dying.
Okay.
And they are those, like, spider crabs. They inhabit host beings, which is the humans in this case. And they're hoping that the humans will help propagate their species, essentially.
Okay. Is that said in the movie?
No, I think it's supposed to be implied.
Okay, well, yeah, I like that interpretation.
But yeah, it's supposed to be that, like, they're this race of beings that are dying out.
Right.
They're trying to figure out a way to live.
Well, they should just say that. That's a cool explanation. Why wouldn't they put that in there?
I don't know.
Yeah, like as this, the whole group of them, and they're all, they've got these three main guys that are kind of controlling everything, and then this crowd of people that is agreeing to everything they say is, it was a little, I don't know, it's a little mundane to me. I think it would have been better. It would have been more mysterious for us to see one or two villains be threatened by one or two personalities, and then maybe at the end of the movie we find out there's a committee, there's a whole race of these beings that are trying to learn about humanity. But throughout the movie, the villain is just this whole group of people that just don't seem very threatening because their methods.
Well, they're not though.
I know, but
think
they
it's
should
like
be
a real villain.
They should be. I mean, they are the villain of the movie. They're the bad guy.
Yeah, but it's how do you interpret something? If we were taking what's animal testing, essentially,
right?
They were kidnapped a bunch of people X amount of years ago, or whatever,
right?
Put them on some weird biosphere kind of thing next to a star in space.
But if I'm a rat in a maze, I'm terrified by the professor. And I wasn't terrified by the villains in this movie the way a rat would be terrified by the person that's putting them through.
But I think it's because the enemy has your face, though. If they were actual aliens.
Then that's a reason to make them more terrifying, because that's a reason to give them more of a personality, which is what I was asking for, is because they look like humans, so we need a personality that defines them as the villain. Because we know they're the villain. The movie says that, here's your villain, but we don't get a sense of, threat from them, partly because they don't have a smart way about solving the problems of the situation they're trying to figure out, basically. Which is something I'll get into again a little later as we talk about the ending.
Well, like I said, I don't think it's like that they are particularly smart or anything.
They're not.
But so, like I said, like for me, it's more like they're not really villains per se. They're bad scientists.
They are.
Yeah.
And if that's the explanation, that makes sense. But that wasn't interesting for me to watch, as opposed to a real villain, a good scientist, someone who is threatening to the people in the world, whether they know or don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, for me, it's the characters are like a tertiary idea in this.
Yeah,
it's because they aren't real people,
right?
And again, at the end, like she's not even Emma at the end; she's Anna,
right? Yeah, which I think is a really cool concept. The concept of this movie is great. I just think the execution wasn't as good as it could have been. Then I write the word arbitrary down, which is kind of what paints the rest of the plot for me. Was a lot of things just kind of move forward arbitrarily. The end of the movie explains most of it and why it's happening the way it is. But the execution of what's happening. So for this, I have like a comparison to The Sixth Sense. I know we've talked about this before, but The Sixth Sense is a movie that really, I mean, if it wasn't for the ending of The Sixth Sense, it would be a decent, horror movie, drama, whatever you want to call it. The thing that makes Sixth Sense work when you're watching it for the third, fourth, fifth time is that, and I don't know if you agree with this, but that the plot is actually interesting. The relationship between the doctor and the patient is actually something you enjoy watching despite the ending, and then the ending is what makes it an incredible film. This movie, has the twists at the end, but the film, the plot leading up to it, everything in the middle is not interesting. So when you have the explanation, which washes away all of the plot holes, you're still left with a drama that just isn't very compelling. That was one of my key issues with the film.
So it's kind of funny because my whole thing was like, I'd probably like the movie more if they didn't have any of the alien stuff in it.
Exactly. I completely agree with that. Like, the alien could even be this unspoken, you don't even see it, and you don't...
No, that's not what I mean. It's just like when Kiefer Sutherland at the end is just explaining everything.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this is what's going on. Like, no, they shouldn't have explained any of that.
So, like, another one of my issues is when Rufus Sewell's character is... with his uncle, and they find out he's with the uncle and they know where the uncle is, instead of injecting themselves into that situation to get rid of John Murdoch, they expand the stairs to try to slow him down, and that scene happens, and I go, well, that was a minor inconvenience, because he just kind of stops, watches the stairs go, and then he's like, okay, and then he just runs up the stairs. And I'm going, if they have the ability, they seem to have the ability to inject themselves wherever they want to be, and if they have the ability to know where he is and expand the staircase, why don't they just inject themselves into that scenario and kill him? Because at this point, I explained it to myself at that point because the reason they didn't do it is because they were threatened by him. But it's revealed that they know he doesn't have a hold over his power. Like, he doesn't know how to use it.
But at the same time, he did kill 2 of their own.
Accidentally. I mean, just throw in like 6. Like, just throw in like 6 or 7 guys that they don't give a crap about, and just let him go to town and try to take care of him before he learns how to use his powers. That was another little plot hole for me.
But again, like I said, that's kind of movie logic. And I'm not saying that's a valid excuse, but at the same time, I'll definitely logisticize some of that. Just like, oh, well, that's movie logic.
Yeah.
As people aren't as smart in movies.
So for you, when you're logisticizing something like that, clearly for me breaks the movie down a little bit, what about this movie for you overrides that? Like, what about this movie is the good that outweighs the bad for you? Is it the visuals? Is it the shots? Is it the
directing? Like I said, everything about this movie, like just how it's done, especially visually.
Right.
I mean, cinematography, editing,
right?
The sets and everything themselves, like it's all done in a studio. There's no actual locations,
right?
Like, it's just a beautiful movie.
And I agree. I totally agree with that. It's just, for me, for that to really stick with me, there has to be a good story in it.
No, and like I said, I'm not disagreeing with you that, like I said, it's not even like it's a valid excuse.
Well, it is for you, though. That's why I'm asking. Like, for you, it's a valid excuse. For me, it's not. That's the thing, and that's what's cool about having these discussions is...
Well, I said, like, it won't make me hate a movie because somebody does something stupid in a movie.
Right.
Like, I'll definitely watch a movie and be like, well, I would never have done that. Or, like, nobody would ever do that. But you're watching a movie at the same time, and we're like, well, I mean, maybe somebody would have.
Well, yeah, if I can say maybe somebody would do that, yes. But if it's, if it's a situation where I think I know the character well enough that they would or wouldn't do something, and they continuously do things, or even don't do things that I think they would or wouldn't do, that's when it starts to break down for me. So
he meets up with John Hurt's character, then they're in prison for a minute, and kind of like nothing happens in this.
Right. So they're clearly chasing after him at this point. Now we know it's because he can tune, so he can change the world. They're threatened by him. But then they
want to make him one of their own.
Right. Well, yeah, because he's so powerful. But then that's another issue for me, is there's never really an explanation of why he has this ability. Like, for me, it's kind of like he is the one to the Matrix's Neo. Neo is the one. But, Keanu Reeves' character in the Matrix is, you could explain him being the one because he's a really good hacker, and he has generally a good heart, and he falls in love in the movie. There's never really an explanation for Rufus Sewell's character to be powerful the way he is. So that was something that bothered me.
Well, I think even Keither says it like, oh, it just like he evolved or something like that to deal with it.
You had the gene.
Or, no, it's just like, if you've been doing this for so long, like, humans adapt kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he says we would have been doing that for, like, millennia.
And like you said, you don't know what else Rufus Sewell's character has been doing. It would make sense if it kind of came around and Kiefer Sutherland's character had, as part of his experiments, already injected him with something that helped him learn the abilities in the first place, and he had been doing this since maybe he was a baby or something, because again, we don't know what their past really is. So that would be kind of
which I don't think that's the case. I think he's just an anomaly.
It's not, but it just would have been cool. It would have been a cool way to explain it. See, there are answers here, but it's like they didn't put them in there. So the payoff with the for me, the big cool ending was, you know, him injecting Rufus Sewell's character and him learning, all of his powers so that he can, combat Agent
Well, he's
Smith.
like, I'm giving you this in a couple minutes, so you can learn, lifetimes worth of practice. Sort of. Like for me, it's more interesting. At least, like it's just like him trying to get to Beach City,
right?
And how nothing adds up there.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I love the ending. Yeah.
Well, he's just like, I gotta get to Beach City, so he gets on the train. Like, no, this is the last stop, and then the train to Beach City doesn't stop because it was the express.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff like that. And then when...
I know all about that. I lived in New York City. It happens. That was realistic.
And then John Hurt, takes him there finally. And it's just a wall.
It's just a wall, and they bust through it. So I read that test audiences were so disturbed by the fact that the whole space station or whatever they're in didn't implode when they busted into space, that they added, right before releasing the film into theaters, they added the force field. When John Hurt and one of the strangers flies out beyond the force field, they added that because test audiences didn't think it was realistic. I'm like, that's what bothered you? Really?
That is pretty.
At that point, I was just like, no, it's cool, whatever. But yeah, I put down that the movie becomes more interesting halfway through as it begins to explain what it wants to be about, but the movie is never really about that. It's never really about the soul. It's never really about what makes us human. It doesn't really go that deep, and that was something that I wanted it to do. For me, another one of the issues with the plan of the strangers, and again, this is explained when you said that they aren't very good scientists, they're not very bright, is surely they would realize that in studying humanity, they're not going to get an accurate depiction of what humanity is by depriving us of daylight and a sense of time, because that is really, that's one thing that makes us is the essence of time.
That it's not a good experiment.
Exactly.
But it was because they don't like daylight and they don't like water. And so it was kind of like my science issue there. Well, that's a movie I haven't seen, so I can't really super judge it.
Yeah.
But aliens go to a planet that's covered in water and fight.
What movie again?
Signs.
But I think it's that they don't know that water will hurt them until they get there. I mean, they do know it when they get there because they avoid water, and that's what leads to the conspiracy that they don't like water. But yeah, that's a good point.
And I said again, that's a movie I haven't watched. I just know that's like the deal with the movie.
Well, you haven't seen Signs?
Nope.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's the next one we'll watch. No.
But yeah, it's like you're dealing with these beings, like they're made of water, but you guys don't like water.
Well, yeah.
And then like you thrive in sunlight, and we're like, well, yeah, we hate the sunlight.
That's a good, again, another good point.
So I was like, yeah, just kind of like a bad experiment in itself, because it's like something you don't like. So we're like, we're just not going to deal with this.
Yeah, exactly. The question I had, if the man has been imprinted, if Rufus Sewell's character has been imprinted with the history of a killer, then he wouldn't pick up the goldfish at all. But then it can be explained by the fact that he is different. He has the ability to tune, so he has the ability to override the nature that.
Well, he wasn't fully imprinted.
Well, that's
which
true.
I guess is supposed to be the issue there.
Okay,
he's like he woke up during the imprint.
Okay,
and I guess he didn't get the whole vial in him,
and
that's why he has like botched memory.
Okay, so that makes sense. But then my issue is, why would they continue killing for him, continue to frame him when they know that he already knows that he's not the killer?
Because I think they want the cops to do that.
That makes sense. Okay, so they want the cops to capture him so they can go to a place to find him, which they eventually do. Okay, so that makes sense. Thank you for that. Oh, yeah, so the speech on the boat when Sutherland is explaining everything, to me, I'm going through all my list of plot holes that I'm having. That whole speech fills them all in. And so I was like, it feels like they came up with a concept before they even started writing. Like they had the title before they even started writing the piece. And then as they wrote, they came across all these plot holes. And then they were like, all right, we need to write one speech in the movie so we can fill in all these plot holes. And that's exactly what they did.
That's just giant exposition. And that's what I said. That's kind of what I was saying. Like, I wish they had gotten rid of them almost.
Right.
Because I can be like, well, it's fine if there's plot holes because it's fucking aliens.
Just leave it be.
And, just craziness. And I was like, it's kind of it's an interesting story to say, and be like an interesting movie in itself if that wasn't what was going on.
So I would say if they left it, if they never really tried to, they did too much explaining. Throughout, they really treat the audience like they're stupid, and that there's too much explaining in the second half of the movie. Where it would have been a more interesting movie if I walked away going, Dan, what the hell was all that about? And getting on message boards and going, ooh, here's this person's interpretation. Well, I think it was about this.
And that's what I'm saying. It's just because it's in your imagination.
Yeah.
So it's more interesting probably
in
your head than what it would have been.
Exactly. One little note I had, how does anyone have a tan? Both of the detectives, especially the detective that jumped in front of a train, is really dark skinned. So I'm going,
he was at Beach City.
Yeah. Yeah, it must have been.
Or Shell Beach, sorry.
And then so it goes back to Jennifer Connelly's character, who is now Anna. She wakes up, she works in a box office now at a theater.
Where a movie called Book of Dreams is coming soon.
I didn't catch that. Nice.
It's on the marquee.
So she gets on the bus, and the guy gets up and insists that she takes a seat.
Yeah, I read that too. He's a gentleman.
He's a gentleman. And her facial expression is like, thank you so much, I'm exhausted. And I'm like, I'm exhausted from sitting in the box office all day.
And sleeping?
Yeah, I was like...
Well, I used to work in a movie theater. Like, it gets tiring just having to deal with people.
Oh, I know, but like just her, she's like, thank you so much. Yeah. Oh, I'm exhausted.
But it looked like she was sleeping there.
Right, exactly.
Then he's like comes into his powers and makes Shell City or Shell Beach or whatever, and opens the door and the beach is there. And it's an awesome shot.
Very cool shot. Yeah.
Kind of dumb though, because Jennifer Connelly just happens to be sitting there.
Well, again, he shapes the world the way he wants, so that's what he wanted when he opened the door.
Yeah, but I don't think did he move her there because she was like getting on the bus.
We don't know what time.
Well, I'm imagining time. Well, exactly.
Yeah,
and I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
All right, so I just had like some interesting tidbits on this movie.
Okay.
When this came out, it blew like records as far as the average cuts per second.
1.8 seconds between each cut.
So no. In the 2000 director's cut, the average shot length is 2.1.
Okay.
The median is 1.6. In the 98, it's 1.9, and the median being 1.4.
Wow. See, that's
like a cut every 2 seconds.
Yeah, that's like a lot of Christopher Nolan's movies are like that.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, if he like had that he was into these movies,
right?
It makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's what I love about Interstellar. A little off topic, but
still never seen that movie.
He's kind of fixed that with Interstellar, and I mean that it's once you know that about Christopher Nolan movies, you can't stop paying attention to it when you're watching like Batman and
that's what I was
asking. Memento.
I was asking you afterwards. I was like, hey, do you want to know something that'll ruin this movie for you?
Oh, is that what you were talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. No, once I heard that, I definitely pay attention to it.
And then it was just influences on it, and then like I'd mentioned the Maltese Falcon, that just being like that 40s setting. I guess he referenced the Twilight Zone, and just he wanted to have like a horror feel as well as it being the sci-fi.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Terry Gilliam. In just that style.
Very Terry Gilliam, yeah.
And then also Terry Gilliam influenced movies, which were like The City of Lost Children and Delicatessen, which are both Genu and Caro. I don't know if I'm saying that right. They're French guys. So
sounds
apologies.
Right to
me. And then, like I had said before, was Metropolis, Nosferatu, another early German film.
Cool. And
then Akira, and I guess he actually referenced the ending battle as like the tribute or homage to Akira, Otomo's Akira.
I was watching it with my wife, and she said this ending scene is like watching an anime. This is kind of crazy.
That's kinda,
yeah, that's funny.
And then like I said, and then they've also compared it to being like 13th Floor, but I was like, that movie, as good as it is, it's based off another book and stuff. But nobody remembers it with like Craig Bierko and Vincent D'Onofrio.
It'll have to be an episode.
Maybe. I don't know. Like I like that one.
Oh.
But like especially if I know you don't like this one, if I'd reference another movie that's very similar to it, maybe down the road. And then I guess it's been compared to a novel which was called Doom City, so I'm gonna have to look that up. And then another short story called The Tunnel Under the World, and that was like something I'd never heard of until I was just like reading a little bit about it, just even like on Wikipedia. I think it was mentioned.
So what do you think rating wise? I mean, I want to get back to the person who recommended the movie also saying what they're rating it. So
I would give this a 3.
Okay.
Like I said, it definitely has its flaws and issues, but I really enjoy this movie. Yeah. And like I said, part of it is just nostalgia. Like I watched this when I was like 10 or 11 then.
Right. What do you think about my rating?
I mean, it sounds like another 1.5.
Yeah, 1.5. I was teetering on a 1, but at halfway through the movie, as things started to get explained and as the visuals of the film continued to be compelling, I added half a star back in there. So for next week, I think every entry we've done has a little bit of nostalgia tied to it. Maybe not Gentlemen Broncos because it's not as old, or does that have nostalgia for you?
Did you watch it was just definitely a movie. Yeah, well, I don't. know if it ever got a theatrical release, but
right.
as soon as released on DVD.
Right. So for this next week, then we're gonna go way ahead to something that's barely been out longer than a year. I think it's gonna be a movie that 10 years from now I'm still gonna love. I'm gonna feel very nostalgic about, and I know you're excited about watching it. Spike Jonze's latest movie, Her.
Oh yeah, awesome.
All right.
I've been meaning to watch this since it came out.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you about this movie.
Awesome.
Great film.
So
thank you guys again for listening. If you're listening.
If you are.
Yeah. My name is Jesse Hughes.
And I'm Daniel Gilmore.
This is Show and Tell.